You're now watching Wayback Wednesday, sponsored by Davenport Auto Park, the ride of your life. And also sponsored by Flores Glass, serving the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
Well, good evening and welcome to another episode of Wayback Wednesday. I'm Randy Adcox. After a 2-week hiatus, we are back live. Today is Wednesday, August the 2nd of 2023. The tornado that came through here Wednesday 2 weeks ago wreaked havoc all over this area, Nash and Edgecombe counties. I live out in Dorchester community, and several of us out there took a bit of a lashing, if you will. We're all fine in my household anyway. We did take some damage, but nothing that can't be repaired or replaced. So hearts and prayers go out to those who were much worse off than we are. And if you know anybody that was directly affected by this thing, you know it's a life-altering experience when something like this hits you and does the damage that we saw all across the area where the tornado came through. Power was out for us anyway from about noon, 12:30 or so when the storm hit that Wednesday until about 3:30 or so the next morning. So we were fortunate. I understand there were some folks who were without power for a few days. And of course there were some folks who lost their entire home. And so, just the devastation from that storm was something I had not seen in this area since Hurricane Floyd, frankly, in 1999. So that being said, I'd started tonight to kind of I've got some pictures, and I had thought about just letting tonight's show be dedicated to the aftermath of the storm and showing some pictures. But after thinking about it, I said, no, it's just still too painful for a lot of people. And so I went in an entirely different direction. And I actually picked back up in one part of the show. We'll get back to something we talked about a couple of weeks ago. But I had one of our viewers, Randy Harrell, who's a regular viewer. You've heard me mention Randy before. He's from here now, living out, I think, in Nashville, Tennessee. And but he sent me a text earlier this week about a story of a pilot from World War II who was flying along in his airplane somewhere over Australia, and found out he had a snake in the plane with him. And so I can't imagine what could be more terrorizing than to be in an enclosed area as small as a cockpit of an airplane and find that there's a snake in there with you. But that's what happened, and this gentleman's story is nothing short of miraculous. And it appears that he may have been married more than once, but the message that Randy sent me was that he was married to a woman from Rocky Mount. So I was never able to confirm that. I saw where he had been married, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But I'm hoping maybe someone will know the man, will know the family, and maybe be able to confirm that indeed he was, at some point in his life, married to someone from Rocky Mount. But let's start off, Lee. Let's put up picture number one. This is an article from the Johnson City, Tennessee newspaper that appeared in their newspaper in 1942, July of 1942. And that's the fellow there. His name is, at this time, he was Lieutenant Robert Harry Vaught. I think he went by the nickname of Bob. In fact, he was jokingly referred to as Snake Bite Bob for a long time. But the story reads, snake bitten at 3,000 feet in the air, U.S. Army Lieutenant Robert Harry Vaught, 24, of Johnson City, has rejoined his squadron in Australia after a perilous adventure recently aloft and aground. Lieutenant Vaught, a graduate of Science Hill High School, this is the son of the lady there in Johnson City, said while flying 75 miles from his home base, Lieutenant Vaught noticed a particular marked snake near his left foot. He put the plane into a slip to try to slide the snake into the corner, but when he touched the rudder bar, the snake bit him twice. Vaught then seized the snake and threw it out. Almost immediately he began to feel ill, so he made a forced landing in a dry swamp. After fainting several times, he dragged himself to a water hole where he put a tourniquet on his badly swollen leg and made a mud pack, which relieved the pain somewhat. He thought of scarifying the wounds, but decided it was too late to do any good. During the afternoon, he sighted another plane and radioed for help. That night he had to fire his machine gun to drive off wild buffaloes that were threatening to stampede him. When rescuers had not located him the next day, Vault managed to fit a piece of wood to the left rudder pedal so he could operate it by hand. He made a successful takeoff and returned to his base. After a period in the hospital, he has now rejoined his squadron. I can't imagine the wherewithal to have been bitten by an obviously poisonous snake. It doesn't say what kind of snake it was, but it was bitten by a poisonous snake, twice in fact, on the foot. Somehow managed to get the snake out of the aircraft without getting bit on his arm or hand, and then made an emergency landing, got out, had to fire his machine gun during the night to keep from being stampeded by wild buffaloes, and then to get back in the airplane and rig up a stick that would allow him to control a rudder pedal, which is ordinarily something you control with your feet. You've got a left and right rudder pedal. So since he couldn't use his left foot, he rigged up a stick to that rudder pedal that he could use by hand to move that one pedal, and then took back off, flew to another air base, and successfully landed again. So heroic is certainly one word. Let's move on, Lee, to item number 2. It was such a big story in World War II that it actually made it into the comics. And this article here talks about, it says, Johnson City aviators struggle with snake featured in comics. And I looked high and low, tried to find somewhere some evidence of this newspaper comic strip, and never could find it. And it may have just been a local thing there in Johnson City, Tennessee. But in any case, it just tells the same story. He was actually, it says, at 3,000 feet in the air when the snake bit him. And he goes on to talk about again how he, his legs swole all up, and he had to do basically emergency landing, and he thought he was in an airstrip. Turned out to be it was just a swamp, a dry swamp at that. And so anyway, I'd love to get my hands on this cartoon and see it, but so far I've not been able to locate it. And if things weren't bad enough, you get bit by a snake while you're flying along there, and then you make an emergency landing, you're almost stampeded by wild buffalo, you take off again in a rigged up airplane that really and truly by all measures probably shouldn't be flown at all in the condition that he was in, much less this rig he put on the rudder pedals. I'm certain that was not a safe way to do it. Obviously he was able to successfully do it. But after all of that, item number 3, Lee, if you would put that up for us. In April of 1943, this article appeared again in the Johnson City newspaper there in Johnson City, Tennessee. And it says, Captain Robert Harry Vault, son of Mrs. Lauren Vault of 714 East Myrtle Avenue, who was seriously wounded in a crash landing of his plane on March 5th, is getting along very well. Vault, who was recently decorated and promoted to captain, suffered severe lacerations of his forehead when his plane made a crash landing somewhere, and that part I can't read it. It's kind of befuddled there. Anyway, this is the same flyer who got bit by the snake and survived that, and then ended up crashing his airplane yet again and survived that too. As far as I know, he went on and lived a long and healthy life. Item number 4, if you would, Lee. This was just a picture that appeared in the paper. Again, all these are from the Johnson City newspaper there in Johnson City, Tennessee. This says, Lieutenant Robert Harry Vault above, 24 of Johnson City, Tennessee, an Army Air Corps flyer, recently returned to his squadron base in Australia after being bitten in midair high over the Pacific by a snake that had crawled into his plane before he took off. He threw the snake out, made a forced landing in a dry swamp, and was attacked by wild buffalo, but managed to escape and brought his plane home safely. So, hometown hero for sure. I also read some articles that made mention of him being a bit of an ace. I think he had something like 5 kills in one air-to-air combat scenario somewhere over the South Pacific. But in any case, remarkable young fella. And if anyone knows anything about this fella, again, his name was Robert Harry Vault. I understand he went by Bob, hence the nickname Snakebite Bob. But anyway, the rumor was that he was married, at least at some point in his life, to a woman from Rocky Mount, or a girl from Rocky Mount. So I've not been able yet to confirm that. If anyone knows anything about this gentleman, or anyone knows anything about the woman he may have been married to here in Rocky Mount, let us know. As usual, the number is 407-1111. We'd love to hear from you anytime during the show tonight. You've heard me mention Facebook quite often on the show because I'm on it every day, just kind of curious, if nothing else, but I do like to look at some of the information and some of the articles that are there and posted. And of course, the Rocky Mount Way Back When Facebook page always got some interesting information on it, and interesting pictures too, for that matter. And there was a picture, and I want to say we have shown this picture before, but I went back through my pictures, and if I've shown it before, I could not find my original copy of it. So item number 5, if you would, Lee. This appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram in the 1940s, and it's a picture of the intersection of Sunset Avenue and Church Street. And just to point out a few things to you, in the background there, the tall building in the background, that's the Masonic Temple. And of course, beside the Masonic Temple was where Chipley Lincoln Mercury was. I worked there in high school. And of course, it's a print shop, I think, there in that space now. There on the corner was a gas station, and we've talked many times about how many times there was a gas station on just about every corner in some parts of Rocky Mount, particularly in the 1940s and 50s. And so this particular picture, the caption reads, "Andy's Esso Station, Sunset and Church Street. Note Masonic Temple across the street and WCEC white 2-story house across the street where Ray Wilkinson used to broadcast Old Oak Tree." Photo was taken from Bullock Chevrolet, probably by Bugs Behringer. So he was either on top of the building or on the second floor of the Bel Air Chevrolet building there on Church Street, looking north, obviously, down Church Street, and snapped this picture. The big 2-story white house, I'm not sure what the story is behind that, but it says here, the caption reads, white 2-story house across the street where Ray Wilkinson broadcast the Old Oak Tree. Now, many of you remember Ray Wilkinson, radio broadcaster here locally. I have some fond memories of listening to him do his farm reports every day around noon. But I'm not sure I guess the radio station was located in that house. I think that's what it was saying, WCEC radio. And of course, they're now out on 97 out south of Rocky Mount. But in any case, I guess in 1940s, that's where the station was located, in that 2-story building there. And this appears to be a winter scene just by the fact that I don't see much foliage on the trees. They seem to be pretty bare. It even looked like maybe some snow there in the bottom right-hand corner outside of that building there. So it's a neat old picture, though, of a bygone era. And again, Andy's Esso Station, which I'm thinking is the one across the street there on the corner. It does say on the corner of Sunset and Church. But I'm thinking that's what that is, Andy's Esso Station. Okay, so Eric Dawson called me a couple of weeks ago. Oh, we got a call. Let's get this call. Hello, caller, you on the air?
All right, that service station right there that you're talking about, it was Andy's Esso. Later on, in the late 1950s, it was operated by a man named William Roy Whitehurst. He had a son named Bill Whitehurst, William Roy Whitehurst Jr., who still lives here in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And right there across, as you're looking towards that white building, just to the right of that white house is where the Center Theater was.
Right.
The Center Theater opened in June of 1936.
That's exactly right. And you know, I had forgot that where the center was, but you're exactly right. That's where it was. And of course, in later years, right there beside the Andy's Esso and in between that and the Masonic Temple where Chipley Lincoln Mercury was, across the street from Chipley Lincoln Mercury was Chipley's used car lot.
Right.
So anyway, and I'm glad you called in. I just mentioned your name before you called in. You had asked me about one of your relatives who played in a local orchestra. And I forget his name at the moment. I've gotten it written down on my desk. But just so you know, I was going to let you know, I looked in earnest and could not find any mention of him anywhere. But while I was looking for him, I found a lot of other neat information that I had not previously seen. So I'll be sharing that with the viewers here in a few minutes.
All right.
Okay.
Goodbye.
All right, buddy. Thank you now. Okay. Yeah, as I said, I was looking for a relative of Eric's that played. We talked a couple of weeks, if you remember. In fact, we spent a couple of weeks talking about, we got a call. Let's get this call. Hello, caller. You on the air?
Yes.
Turn your TV down.
Hello?
Yeah, turn your TV down.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. If you'll turn your TV down, you can hear me. There you go.
Okay, the house over there that Ray Wilkerson was in.
Yes, ma'am.
The radio station. I remember when I was a little girl, probably about 7, 8 years old, on Saturday morning they had a program for children that could come up there and sing or do different things. And I remember going up there several times on Saturday morning, and I sang a little song. It was one day in my garden, oh, what did I see? A bumblebee, chasing a bumblebee.
You know what? Now that you say that, that reminds me, my mother used to go up there on Saturday mornings and play the piano. You may have sang to her playing the piano because she went up there too. Did you ever know Sonia Paris?
Yes, I did.
That was my mother.
Was that your mother?
That was my mother, yes,
Sonia
ma'am.
was your mother?
She sure was.
Yes, I knew her.
Yeah.
We used to have the best time going up there singing on that program.
Well, she has mentioned it several times over the years, and I'd forgotten all about that until you said what you just said, and it reminded me, it came back to me then, 'cause I remember her talking about she would go up there,
yeah,
she would play
I was
piano.
about 7 years old.
And she couldn't have been much older, maybe 10 or 12.
It's good to hear from you.
Well, thank you. Who am I speaking with?
Vivian Davis.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Okay. Well, thanks for calling in, Miss Davis.
Uh-huh.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
All right, you too. Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay. I just realized it's time for our first commercial break. So, Lee, let's go ahead and do that. When we come back from the break, I've got a couple of video clips we're going to show tonight. Oh, we got one more call. Let's get this call before we take that break. Hello, caller. You on the air? Oh, I guess they maybe changed their mind. Maybe they'll call back after the break. We're going to go ahead and take this break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some band and some music and some orchestras. Going to show you a couple little video clips. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Wayback Wednesday.
You're now watching Wayback Wednesday, sponsored by Davenport Auto Park, the ride of your life. And also sponsored by Flores Glass, serving the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
Today, having the right healthcare plan tailored to your specific needs is vital to your peace of mind. The question is not if you will need the coverage, but when. And when that time comes, you want to be prepared. With the rising cost of medication, medical procedures, and doctor visits, you should know which is the right insurance plan for you. From life insurance, affordable health care, to Medicare, there are a lot of insurance options available, and choosing a plan can be overwhelming. Having Gus Tullis as your insurance professional on your side will give you peace of mind, because you will know you are covered with the insurance that meets your needs.
Hello, my name is Gus Tullis of Gus Tullis Insurance, and I've been helping people with their insurance needs for well over 20 years. Call me today. I'll answer any question you have. 252-937-6913. Looking forward to hearing from you.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
There's a main nerve that leaves your back that goes into your hip and goes down your leg. It's called the sciatic nerve. A back injury can put pressure on that nerve, causing pain, numbness, tingling. Chiropractors can actually help that. At the Hammer Chiropractic Center on Sunset, we know exactly what to do. We have very good relationships with the doctors in Rocky Mount. We'd like to co-manage people's care. Some medications may help us do our jobs, and our jobs may help their medications work better.
If you or your loved one is living with hearing loss, and if you haven't found a solution that fits your lifestyle, then you should consult with the local experts at the new Hearing Aid Urgent Care in Nashville, North Carolina. Hearing Aid Urgent Care is a place to go for over-the-counter hearing solutions that will improve your daily life and communication between your loved ones and you. Purchasing in our store does not require any prescription or medical recommendation. Our team of experts does recommend a hearing examination so we can help you purchase the correct product for your personal needs. We hold regular listen and learn events so you can ask questions and work with the high-quality products from our vendors to find out what hearing device will best suit you before you buy. Open Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And you can call 252-459-4008 to find out more information. Hearing Aid Urgent Care located at 102 West Nashville Drive in Nashville, North Carolina.
And we're back. During the break, I just happened to glance onto my phone and saw I had a message come in about 5 or 6 minutes after 8 tonight, and the viewer said there was no volume. Oh, we got a call. Let's see if this call. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, Randy.
Hey.
Catty corner across from that Esso station was a Texaco station, and the last I remember, it was run by John Hammond, and it was torn down to build the First Union Bank. And Mr. Hammond went on to open up a little grocery store down on Sunset Ave, 600 blocks Sunset Avenue. That's what I remember.
Okay. Roughly when would that have been, you think? In the 1950s, maybe 60s?
Well, mid-60s.
Mid-60s?
I think they built First Union Bank about 65 or 66.
Okay.
So it would have been mid-60s.
Okay.
It was just a little small station, and if you look, you can see in the A-frame of the roof, you can see the Texaco Star.
I got the picture here in my hand. Yep, that's what you're talking about. Gotcha. Yep, I do see that. Sure do. Okay. All right.
All right.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you a lot.
Have a good
All
evening. All right. Bye-bye. Okay. Before the break, I was talking about for 2 or 3 weeks before the tornado came through and disrupted everything, we had been kind of on a little bit of a run with big bands and orchestras and so forth. And so, and then when I spoke to Eric about he had a relative, I think it was a great uncle maybe, that he remembered hearing family stories about, used to play an orchestra. And he gave me his name, and I went in earnest trying to find which orchestra he played with or something about him, and I just ran into a dead end. But while I was doing that, I stumbled across some advertisements and some articles and pictures and so forth that I had not seen before. So to tie all that together, and also actually stumbled across a couple of advertisements that kind of brought back a memory that I had from a show we'd done, it's been over a year ago now. We talked about the Gallopade. For those old enough to remember the Gallopade, it was a big deal in downtown Rocky Mount, certainly in the 20s and 30s. There was a big parade up and down Main Street, and just a lot going on. In fact, Lee, if you would put up item number 6, this ad appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram June the 21st of 1935. Actually, let me take that back. It was not the Telegram. It appeared in the Rocky Mount Herald. That's when Rocky Mount had more than one newspaper. But this appeared, let's just say, June 21st, 1935. And as you can see there, it's advertising. It says, "We urge you to make your plans now for an unparalleled adventure by attending the Gallopade in Rocky Mount, June 20th through 21st. And this is, of course, there was a committee. You see at the bottom, the Gallopade Association. And there were several events. It says Thursday at 10 a.m. They were crowning the Queen of the Gallopade. At 11 o'clock, the elaborate street parade featuring 40 floats, 15 bands and drum corps. At 2 o'clock, there was going to be professional auto races at the fairgrounds. 8 p.m. that night, there was going to be a free costume street dance with confetti and novelties. On Friday the 21st, there was going to be day and night airport dedication, Army, Navy, and transport planes, blimps, and gliders. Notable attending included the governor of North Carolina and the nation's highest authorities in aviation. this was a big deal. It was a lot of fun, I'm sure. It's a shame we don't have such events anymore. But one of the things that caught my eye here, and what I've got highlighted in yellow there, it says 2 orchestras, the Hal Thurston and Paul Jones Orchestra. So now we've talked about both of those in previous shows. In fact, we've shown some pictures of the Paul Jones Orchestra. And so that kind of got me looking just to see what I could come up with. And you know, back in, this is 1930s, prior to World War II, of course. Most folks did not have a television. We talked about it before. Radio was king, and so other than people going out to these events and you know, gatherings and so forth, the entertainment for most people was over the radio, if it was any kind of musical or even, you know, radio programs. And so it was just really neat to think back about what it would have been like to have, for your entertainment, nothing but radio in your home, and then the occasional event like this. And these types of events, you know, went on throughout the year. The Gallopade and the June German, there were various dances and events. And I was really surprised by the number of orchestras that, you know, appeared in Rocky Mount over the period of the late 1930s through the late 1950s. Just to name a few, we've talked about Kay Kaiser many times, a local Rocky Mount fellow who went on to be not only a big band leader, world renowned. He was a movie star, obviously, played in multiple movies. And we just mentioned Hal Thurston and the Paul Jones Orchestra, Sid Davis. We're going to talk a little bit more about Sid Davis in a minute. He had a very interesting life, and we'll tell you a little bit more to him in a little bit. There was a Henry Williams Orchestra. Something I did not know, many of you may be familiar with the gentleman from over in Brattleboro named Henry Milgram. My family's from Brattleboro, so certainly I'm familiar with the Milgram name. I can't say I ever knew Henry Milgram himself, but I certainly know the name. And so I had to call my buddy Bob Merritt over in Brattleboro last week and confirm my suspicions. But as it turns out, Henry Milgram was a big band leader himself at one time. In fact, he went by the name of Count von Milgram, and he had an orchestra, the Count von Milgram Orchestra. And then, of course, there was another gentleman by the name of Walter Plummer. I'm not sure, that name rings a bell with me, and I tried to figure out where I knew him from. But anyway, there was another orchestra around here. Walter Plummer was very active in and around Rocky Mount from the early 1950s through the 1970s. I saw where he played multiple times at Bimini Country Club, for example, for special occasions, weddings, receptions, various parties and so forth. But anyway, all of this big band orchestra and musical has some very deep roots in Rocky Mount, going way, way back, literally back to the 1800s. And so if you remember from about a year and a half ago, maybe we talked about the Gallopade and the fact that the Gallopade was actually a dance. And so the Gallopade parade and all the hoopla and all the ceremonies and everything that went along with this Gallopade event in downtown Rocky Mount had its roots in celebrations that literally go back to the 1800s. So I found a video clip that I had played on the show about a year and a half ago now of an actual Gallopade dance. So Leo, we had a point we can put that video up. It should be item number 7, I think, on the list. Well, whenever you're ready, fire it up. But this, when you see it again, if you're watching then, you'll recognize it. It's just it's a group of dancers who are actually dancing to the Gallopade, or dancing the Gallopade, I guess. And while we're on the topic, that the June German is also another dance that dates back to the 1800s. And so, again, these events were based around these dances, the Gallopade and the June German, and they turned it into more than just a dance. It was literally, in some cases, a 2, 3, 4-day event with parades and special events and all kind of entertainment for the public, the vast majority of which was free. There were some things that you had to pay to attend, but the vast majority of these events were free. We ready, Lee? Okay, let's roll the tape then. This is the Gallopade. This is a fairly modern interpretation of it, but you'll get the gist of what the Gallopade is by watching these folks dance the Gallopade. Roll it, Lee. Well, there you go. I don't know about you. I'm tired now. Just watching that made me tired. But you know, I couldn't help but think watching that video. That was obviously they were dancing to pre-recorded music, obviously. But back in the 1800s, bands, obviously, there was no other way for music to be played. You know, the phonograph come along eventually, but back during the time when these dances were very popular, it would be an orchestra playing all that music. And if you think about how music has changed over the years, you know, that type of music there, as I said, dates back to the mid-1800s. And then gradually the music taste changed, not only here in the United States, but around the world. And so many of the types of music and the dances and so forth that evolved in later years, at least in part evolved because of the music that the musicians were coming up with, their own creations, if you will. And so I found another video that's probably more attuned to what most of us attribute to quote unquote big band music, the Glenn Millers and the Duke Ellington and Kay Kaiser. And so let's go ahead and play this one, Lee. It's a little bit shorter than that one, but this is Kay Kaiser from the 1930s, and you'll see the difference in music. And you know, Kay Kaiser, a couple of interesting things about him, he never learned to play an instrument. He was a first-rate showman, and he became very successful, obviously toured the world, in fact, his orchestra, in his whole orchestra, but he never learned to play a musical instrument. And so he was the leader, he was the showman, he was the man that kind of pulled it all together. But he got some very talented people around him, and you know, the old saying is, if you want to be successful, surround yourself with successful people. And so I think it's safe to say that Kay Kaiser did just that, and this is a great example of surrounding yourself with successful people. Roll this next one, and Lee, if you got it ready to go.
Folks, how y'all? Hey, let's listen to Sully Mason, Harry Babbitt, Julie Conway, Trudy Irwin, Jack and Max, and the whole gang in A Rookie and His Rhythm. Okay, come on, let's do it. There he goes, a rookie and his rhythm. Who's he with? He's with a little whack. What's he got? This rookie and his rhythm. He's got what commissioned officers like. Oh, here he is, a private who can jive it. Here he is, a private second class the gals prefer. A private who can jive it. He'll surpass the colonel making a pass. Though he's new in the service with a gun, he's still nervous and we need him to preserve us. He improves the morale of a gal. Yeah. Majors may be very necessary, strictly in a military way. But give to me a rookie and his rhythm. Shoulder arms and let the orchestra play. Hep, 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 hep. 1, 2, 3, 4. Play it, boy. Shoulder arms and let the orchestra play.
Well, that was Kay Kaiser, and that just looked like fun to me. I think everybody there was having a great time. And as I said, Kay Kaiser didn't play an instrument, he didn't sing, but he was a first-rate showman, and I'm sure every show he put on was just pure entertainment. Let's get this call. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
All right. The footage you just showed about Kay Kaiser.
Yep.
He graduated from Rocky Mountain High School in 1923. At that time, the Rocky Mountain High School was located over there on Cokie Road, where the Judicial Center is now.
Okay.
And then about 4 years later, R.M. Wilson High School, or the Rocky Mountain High School, was moved to Marigold Street. But when Kay Kaiser came out of high school in Rocky Mountain, it was in the year of 1923 over there on Cokie Road.
And he went on from left senior high, went to Carolina, was a big guy on campus at Carolina, had a great college career there. That's a heck of a all-around good guy, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, it's time for our next commercial break. Thanks for calling in.
Goodbye.
All right,
Goodbye.
buddy. All right, goodbye. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other entertainment, if you will, around here, and some of the other orchestras that participated in this type of entertainment. It was just, to me, it's like a fun time. The 1930s, and by the way, I said Kay Kaiser got started in the 30s, and he did. Actually, he started in the late 20s when he got out of college. But that footage I just showed there was probably from the 1940s. I say that because it was typical of a war-themed type show. You notice they were talking about people in the military, and so I'm fairly certain that was probably that come from a movie scene. It was probably played in the 1940s during World War II. So anyway, let's take the break, Lee. When we come back, we'll get back into some of this stuff, and we'll do some more talking about old times. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Today, having the right healthcare plan tailored to your specific needs is vital to your peace of mind. The question is not if you will need the coverage, but when. And when that time comes, you want to be prepared. With the rising cost of medication, medical procedures, and doctor visits, you should know which is the right insurance plan for you. From life insurance, affordable health care, to Medicare, there are a lot of insurance options available, and choosing a plan can be overwhelming. Having Gus Tullis as your insurance professional on your side will give you peace of mind, because you will know you are covered with the insurance that meets your needs.
Hello, my name is Gus Tullis of Gus Tullis Insurance, and I've been helping people with their insurance needs for well over 20 years. Call me today. I'll answer any question you have. 252-937-6913. Looking forward to hearing from you.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
There's a main nerve that leaves your back that goes into your hip and goes down your leg. It's called the sciatic nerve. A back injury can put pressure on that nerve, causing pain, numbness, tingling. Chiropractors can actually help that. At the Hammer Chiropractic Center on Sunset, we know exactly what to do. We have very good relationships with the doctors in Rocky Mount. We like to co-manage people's care. Some medications may help us do our jobs, and our jobs may help their medications work better.
If you or your loved one is living with hearing loss, and if you haven't found a solution that fits your lifestyle, then you should consult with the local experts at the new Hearing Aid Urgent Care in Nashville, North Carolina. Hearing Aid Urgent Care is a place to go for over-the-counter hearing solutions that will improve your daily life and communication between your loved ones and you. Purchasing in our store does not require any prescription or medical recommendation. Our team of experts does recommend a hearing examination so we can help you purchase the correct product for your personal needs. We hold regular listen and learn events so you can ask questions and work with the high-quality products from our vendors to find out what hearing device will best suit you before you buy. Open Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And you can call 252-459-4008 to find out more information. Hearing Aid Urgent Care located at 102 West Nashville Drive in Nashville, North Carolina.
And we're back. Got a really nice note text come in from a viewer during the break there. So thank you all so much for viewing and watching the show. You know, it's my pleasure each week to be here with you. I love this stuff too. I'm a history nerd, I admit it. And I especially love, I've said before, my grandfather played slide trombone in the community band of Rocky Mount. So my mother played piano. Both of my grandparents, my grandfather on my dad's side played fiddle. His wife, my grandmother Adcox, played organ. And so I grew up around music, and I used to play a little guitar and a little piano in my younger days, not so much anymore. But I love this looking back. And if I thought there was some way I could do it and not be stuck back in time, I would love to go back in time for a visit. I'd be afraid I would get stuck there and couldn't come back. So I don't think I've got the nerve to try it if it were ever become an option to us. But I'd love to go back if I knew I could come back to this time. Having said that, a couple things that when I was researching for this week's show and looking for this relative of Eric's I mentioned earlier, I kept coming across things that were related to orchestras and big bands, obviously, because I was looking for someone who participated in some of these. And I found events that I never would have anticipated or never would have assumed would be related in any way to an orchestra or a big band or whatever. And item number 9 leaves a prime example. And there's a couple things about this. This appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram January the 18th, 1937. 1937, this ad appeared. And it talks about, back into up until, the 1960s, Rocky Mount High School was known as the Blackbirds. And so Rocky Mount Senior High Blackbirds, in 1937, had a boxing squad. Now, we've talked about, boxing was big in Rocky Mount back in the 30s. Bob Moore, we talked about Bob Moore, and had a gym over near his store over there off Arlington Street. And so there were boxing matches on a regular basis. People would come in from out of town and box, and we would send boxing teams to other cities to box. But there was a high school boxing squad. And so this advertisement talks about the Blackbirds battling the Elizabeth City boxing squad on a big fight program. It says at least 8 bouts will be presented at Recreation Hall tonight. Showing against state champs last week encourages coach. Visit expects to bring strong squad here, a first match for locals. So this is obviously a big deal. Teams of boxers coming in from out of city, perhaps out of state even. And as I read down through this, the second paragraph here says, 8 fights will be presented on the attractive card tonight. Elaborate plans have been made for the event, with Paul Jones Orchestra furnishing music for a half hour before the fights and at the intermission periods between the bouts. So if you think about it, now, this day and age, if they have a fight on TV or whatever, there's some kind of music playing in the background in between the rounds or whatever. We'll take an intermission between bouts. They would have music playing or some kind of entertainment. Well, in the 1930s, the orchestras provided that. And so in this case, it was Paul Jones Orchestra. And, Lou Carson here locally works over at Waters Brothers. Her father played in the Paul Jones Orchestra. And so that's one name of the local orchestras that stuck out in my mind, because Lou was one of the ones that asked me to see if I could find something about the Paul Jones Orchestra because her father played in it. And in fact, on a previous show some time ago, we talked about the Paul Jones Orchestra. But to find that they've supplied music for a boxing match, to me, was kind of strange. I just didn't expect to see that. Item number 10, if you would, Lee. December 1938, the firemen had a dance. The firemen will give the annual Christmas dance. And guess who provided the music? Count Henry Milgram's orchestra. That just tickled me every time I think about it. Like I said, I can't say I personally knew Henry Milgram, But being my family's from Brattleboro, certainly knew the Milgram name, and that's why I called my buddy over there, Bob. I said, Bob, is this the same Henry? Yep. He said, that's him. That's Henry Milgram. And I guess in later years he dropped the Von. He went by just Count Milgram. But at one point he was advertising himself as Count Von Milgram and his orchestra. That was in 1938. Item number 11, Lee, if you would. December 27th of 1938, just a few short weeks after that. This is a terrible picture, and I do apologize, but this is a picture of Henry Milgram as a young man. And it says, shown above, Count Milgram, whose orchestra provided music for the Tall New Tall fraternity dance held at the New Rick's Hotel last night. So, you know, there was a lot of these events going on a regular basis, and a lot of these local orchestras would provide the entertainment, the music, and so forth. So this went on for many, many years around Rocky Mount, certainly from the late 20s all the way up into the 1970s. Item number 12, Lee, this is actually talking about a dance that was held in Windsor. And again, Count Milgram and his well-known orchestra of this city will furnish music for a fireman's Halloween ball to be held in Windsor Tuesday evening, October 31st. The affair is being given by the Windsor Fire Department, and Hampton's Hall is being decorated in festive Halloween style for the occasion. So there was just a lot of this kind of stuff going on, and you know, for people that you know didn't have much entertainment at home, this was good entertainment, I'm sure. Let's move on, Lee. Item number 13. January of 1939, Mr. Hal Thurston was leading his orchestra. The caption reads, officials in charge of the Merchants Exposition Automobile Show, which will get underway here on February 20th, under the sponsorship of the Masonic Orders, announced today that Hal Thurston, popular swing maestro, would play for the Queen's Ball in the new Planters Warehouse on Friday night, February 24th. 33 young ladies, it was announced, are participating in the contest to determine the Queen for the occasion. Proceeds from this show will go toward boosting the building fund on the Masonic Temple here. 1939, Hal Thurston was a very popular band leader. He was very much in demand. Item number 14, Lee. November 20th, 1943, Hal Thurston played at the George's Blue Room. Some of you may be familiar with this. I was not. This was something new to me. This was directly across the street from the Center Theater on Sunset Avenue. In 1943, it was called George's Blue Room. And it says here, the formal opening of George's Blue Room, Tuesday night, November 23rd. Music by Hal Thurston and his orchestra. Reserve your tables now and be with us Tuesday evening for a colorful opening. So, in this place was very popular for a number of years. Item number 15, Lee, was just another ad. It's very similar to this one, but it says Christmas Eve celebration with Hal Thurston and his orchestra, dining and dancing. So they served food there. They had these orchestras come in and provide entertainment. Opposite the Center Theater, phone number 2126. Number 16, Lee, April of 1944. Rocky Mount Telegram had this ad that appeared. It says, there's a dance at the Cobb Foxhall Warehouse number 2. And you see there music by Hal Thurston. They had a round and a square dance. So I'm guessing the round was maybe the Gallopade dance. Doesn't say so, but a round dance, based on the video we saw earlier, I'm guessing they were referring to the Gallopade dance. And of course, everyone knows what the square dance looks like. But this was in April 1944. I had never heard of the Blue Room. I mentioned that just a second ago, and I got my picture a little bit out of order here. Item number 17, Lee. This is the only picture I could find, and it says, your carrier boy should be in this photo. And this is taken inside the Blue Room in January 10th of 1948. The caption reads, your paper boy is somewhere in this picture. The staff photographer snapped the little merchants last night as they assembled in George's Blue Room for the special meeting. Representatives of each department of the Evening Telegram were guests for the occasion and spoke briefly. Refreshments were also served. Useful gifts were presented each carrier following a general business session conducted by R.M. Dunstan, circulation manager. So all these young fellas you see here, and God, they look mighty young, but anyway, they're all newspaper carriers, and they had this special event inside George's Blue Room on Sunset Avenue across from the Center Theater. Surprisingly enough, Hal Thurston didn't stay in the music business forever. He at some point decided he'd been doing it enough, I guess, and changed occupation. In 1950, Lee, item number 18, if you would, And June 13, 1950, Hal Thurston was named the manager of the local Firestone store here. It says for Hal Thurston, who's been associated with Firestone and Rubber Company here for the last 6 years, has been named manager. It says a native of Rocky Mount, Thurston at one time directed a well-known dance band. In high school, he was a football star. The Firestone firm, now headed by Thurston, is one of the largest of its type in this section. Used to love going into Firestone stores as a kid. That and Western Auto were probably two of my favorite stores to go into. The Blue Room became a kind of a synonymous thing for restaurants and clubs, and it became quite popular. There were blue rooms. There's a blue room in the White House, by the way, if you didn't know that. The White House has a blue room. Item number 19, Lee, we're about to run out of time. We won't get to all this. We'll try to get as many as we can in the next minute or two. December 1944, Wright's Chick Shack on Raleigh Road had a blue room. I didn't know that. How many knew about that? Wright's Chick Shack had a blue room. And again, it was just a real popular, supposedly the blue walls gave a relaxing atmosphere, and I ran across several references to businesses and clubs and so forth that had a blue room, in addition to the actual George's Blue Room down on Sunset Avenue there now. Okay, Lee, number 20, December 1946, there was a Masonic Temple ballroom dance, and Henry Williams Orchestra provided music that, and it was sponsored by the Business and Professional Women's Club of Rocky Mount. This rang a bell to me because my mother was a member of this at one time back in the 1970s. The BPWC did a lot of good things around Rocky Mount. We're not going to have time to get to all of these, but real quickly, let's hit this last one here. Number 21, June of 1950, announcing the Carlisle Restaurant featuring Walter Plummer and his orchestra in the Blue Room. This is at the Carlisle Restaurant now, in the Blue Room. Again, June 16, 1950. And of course, we know that the Carlisle Restaurant eventually became the Rio Restaurant. The Rio Restaurant burned down, was rebuilt on the same spot. And so this was appeared in June of 1950. In November of 1950, let's do one more here, number 22. In November of 1950, the Rio Restaurant opened up and took over the operation of what was previously the Carlisle Club. And you see there, announcing the opening of the Rio Restaurant Tuesday, November 2nd, formerly the Carlisle Club, and it mentions the principals there who were in charge of the operation. Folks, that's going to do it for us tonight. Lee, bring it back to me. I do apologize. I was hoping we'd get through. I had another 3 or 4 I wanted to show you. And we'll talk about Sid Davis next week. I'm sorry we didn't get to him. Sid Davis led a fascinating life. I didn't ever know the man, didn't know anything about him. Maybe some of you remember Sid Davis or knew something about him. He was known as the piano man around Rocky Mount. And I'll leave it at that. We'll talk more about Sid Davis next week. I think you'll enjoy hearing about Sid Davis. That's going to wrap it up for us tonight, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Thank those that called in. Hope you have a great week. Take care of yourselves and be kind to one another. We'll see you next week with more Wayback Wednesday. Good night.